So I thought I'd talk to you today really about some themes from a book that I have written called The Age of Aging Better. And I wrote that, which was published last year, because through the work of the Centre for Aging Better over the last 5 years, we've been so privileged to gather a lot of evidence and data and to be spending time thinking about how do things in society need to change so that we can all enjoy a good later life. And I felt that I wanted to bring that to a wider audience, and one way of doing that was to write it in a book. So I'll be drawing on some of that. That was written before COVID. So I also want to share with you some of our latest work, which has been looking at the impact of COVID, particularly on people approaching later life, and just how that's, likely to change the situation in the future. And then finally, obviously, you're a local group there in Enfield. We support a lot of communities across the UK through the UK network of AgeFriendly Communities. And so I just want to touch at the end on sort of the important role that communities can play in creating this sort of new society, this age of aging better that hopefully we all want to be living in. So let's get going. I think many of you will be very sort of aware of the fact of how profoundly the society in which we're living is changing, because the age profile of the population is changing. That's both because we're living on average a lot longer than past generations. So the sort of rule of thumb is about 10 years longer than our parents' generation and about 20 years longer than our grandparents' generation. That's the sort of long-term gains that we've made in life expectancy. But the other factor, particularly here in the UK, is obviously the birth rates and how they've changed over the time. And I think, again, people familiar with the fact that there were two sort of baby booms after both of the world wars. But there was also a much longer baby boom during the 1960s. So this diagram here, which is called a population pyramid, tries to show for both men and women at different ages, from the youngest at the bottom to the oldest at the top, sort of how many people there are in millions of people. And this is looking back 20 years, and you can see there's perhaps a black line in the middle of people in their 30s. And I just want you to sort of keep an eye on that, because that is the 1960s baby boom, who were sort of reaching their 40s at that period. So if we fast forward to 2019, we can see the shape of the population changing, with more people at those older ages, and that group starting to reach. At this point, there, so if we, sorry, just to go back, at this point, if you were to add up all of the people over 65, there are 9 million. So that was in 2000. In this one, if you added up everybody over 65, 12 million. Now we're going to fast forward 20 years into the future, 2039. And at this point, there are nearly 18 million people over 65. So these two trends, living longer and the 1960s baby boom, are set to mean a really radical change in the shape of the population. You can see it's no longer a pyramid, it looks a bit more like a rectangle, as we have similar numbers of people at younger and older ages. And that's really not going to change much until it's around 2050, when those 1960s baby boomers are going to, I guess, disappear. I'm sorry to say this, off the top of the pyramid, effectively when they die. Now, let's take a local look at this, because we're not aging equally across the country.
The thing about aging. So
are you able to, is somebody wanting to come in there, or is that just somebody's come off mute? Okay, I'm going to keep going, because we're going to have plenty of time, hopefully, at the end for questions, if that's okay with everybody. But if you think of a question as I'm speaking, please do pop it in the chat, because that way you won't forget it, and we can make sure that we come back to it at the end. So as we're saying, that's the general picture across on average. But if we look here, it's just a little image that's changing from 2020 to 2040, 2020 to 2040. That's why it's changing colour. And it's really just showing the darker the area is the higher proportion of people over 65 years old. And you can see that today in 2020, there's a few places that are quite dark. Actually, fast forward 20 years, and a lot of the country looks the same as of those areas that are supposedly the oldest places today, places like Torbay and places where we see people retiring up on the sort of East Anglian coast and so on. Now, this other aspect of not aging equally are the inequalities we see here by socioeconomic, so how wealthy we are. And this not only affects our life expectancy, how long we live, but also how long we live in good health. And so here we're contrasting people in the poorest 10% of the population on the left with the richest 10% of the population on the right. And this is for women in England. And you can see that in the poorest area, people are going to live 27 years in poor health compared to just 16 in the richest. And the gap in what we call healthy life expectancy, that's the years lived in good health, you can see is as much as 18 years. So these are really, really big health inequalities. The other thing we're seeing, unfortunately, is that there has been a slowdown in the increase in life expectancy, particularly amongst poorer people, and that for poorer women in the last couple of years, we've actually seen the beginnings of a reversal in life expectancy. So actually people not living as long as they did in the past, which obviously is a really big worry, and that was even before COVID. And we know that unfortunately people in poor communities have died at twice the rate of people in rich communities. And we've also seen a similar difference in terms of people from Black, Asian backgrounds. So this is the backdrop really to why the Centre for Ageing Better exists. So we want this positive vision where a society in which everyone enjoys later life. And the things that we know matter to a good later life are the sort of things around the next layer of that bubble: good health, social connections, financial security, meaning and purpose. But we know, unfortunately, that too many people today miss out on those things. So we have decided to try and focus our efforts working with others to change policy and practice around 4 areas of employment, housing, health and communities. Now, just to mention, if any of you don't know us, we are a charity. We've got funding from the National Lottery Community Fund, but we're also what's called a What Works Centre, which means that the basis of what we do is in evidence. So we try to make sure that the things that we are trying out, that we test and evaluate them, that we try and understand from the research what works, and then work with others to deliver those changes across the country. So I'm going to sort of pick those 4 themes: health, housing, employment and communities, and just go through them each to give you a little bit of a flavour of our work, but also some of the impacts of COVID that we've seen. So hopefully we can get through that fairly quickly and then get on to time for questions. So being in better health, so we've got a goal that we want people to have 5 more years of preventable disability, but also, given those health inequalities, also reduce the gap. Now, what do we mean by unhealthy ageing? Well, there's almost a view, isn't there, that as we get older, somehow it's inevitable that we're going to sort of decline, that we're going to lose capacity. Now, clearly for some people that happens more quickly if they have ill health, but actually for many people, they can live at this sort of higher level for many, many years into later life, and only have this sort of decline perhaps towards the end of their life if they become ill. So this pattern obviously varies very much by individuals about what age it happens. And there's lots we can do to improve in what the WHO called our intrinsic capacity, basically our health and ability to do things. And there's lots in terms of prevention. We know about smoking, alcohol, exercise, and so on. But there are things that can reduce the decline. So perhaps once we've got a diagnosis of something like arthritis or diabetes, there's obviously things that we can do. Again, some of that might be medicine, but some of it might be support to remain active and do exercise that's going to help change that that line, that decline. But we also include in this our ability to do things, because obviously it's not only how healthy we are, but it's also the environment that we live in that makes a difference to whether we can wash ourselves, dress ourselves, get out to the shops, and so on. And so we have a focus on how do you remove some of those barriers and change the environment, our homes, our communities, so that actually people, even if they have got some decline in function, can still really function and participate. So, you know, maybe Zoom is one of those things that's come about, that maybe if you were previously housebound, you couldn't get along to the forum, you're now being able to participate. So something that you can't do because of your intrinsic capacity, technology is helping you to do it. But as I say, there is a gap in life expectancy between rich and poor, and this affects the age at which we, you know, go into that period of decline and find ourselves disabled. So for richer people, the purple line, you might not drop below a disability threshold until you're on average 69 or older. But if you're in that poorest of communities, actually, there are people in their early 50s who are experiencing disability already at early and midlife. So that's what we've really got to change. We've got to make that period of good health, free of disability, as long as possible, so that we can all enjoy a good life. So this, again, are just some facts about those differences in how people get on with what we call activities of daily living. So that is things like washing, shopping, and so on. And you can again see the difference there, this time between the wealthiest fifth of the population and the poorest fifth. So some quite big inequalities there. But actually, there is also an issue just about age, that in terms of our levels of exercise, they hugely drop off, you know, really from sort of 55 onwards, but then particularly over 75. So it's really important, obviously, as well at older ages, that we're not only doing what's called aerobic exercise, so the sort of heart health, you know, getting your heart rate up and a bit out of breath, but actually, and this has been so important during the lockdown, and I really hope that you've been making the most of all the great resources that are out there of sort of exercises that you can do at home to keep up your muscle strength, both arm strength, things like taking a couple of cans of soup maybe and doing some arm rolls, or even more important is your leg muscle strength. So if you're not out and about walking as much, you know, needing to do those extra exercises at home to keep your muscle strength up and balance, to stop having a fall, which obviously is something that we don't want to happen. So what have we been doing at the Centre for Ageing Better? So I've listed there some of the issues, the problems, and pointed to what to change. So we do need more people to be exercising, and we looked at the evidence of what sorts of exercises can help with these muscle strengthening and balance. We've used those to inform the Chief Medical Officer's guidelines. They're things that health professionals use to give advice to people like you about what you can be doing. And we've rated the evidence, so you can see that doing resistance training is really fantastic. So anything with a little bit of light weights, like I say, resistant bands, or you know, things you might have at home, lifting your heavy shopping, they're going to help. But there are other things there as well that are proven to sort of be good for us. And we've tried to look as well at how we can get more local provision of these sorts of exercise classes for people, and spread the good practice across the country. So here's some of the things that you might be wanting to think about for yourself, but also as a forum, about how you can work with local authority, the healthcare system, leisure providers perhaps, to really encourage this focus on promoting physical activity, and particularly strength and balance. But also it's about how we design places so that it's easier to be active. So how do we support walking, make places more walkable, you know, think about your local park, pavements, and, you know, even cycling. So thinking about that, e-bikes have really come on now, lots of people using those. And then there are other things that the age-friendly communities have been promoting, such as Take a Seat campaign, just to make sure that if you are out and about, you feel confident to go out for a walk, a rest that you can do that. So there's some ideas around health. Well, let's get on to work. Be interested to know when we sort of open up into discussion how many of you are still working. There's obviously quite a big drop off once you get past 55, and before, you know, the year before state pension age, only about half of people are in work. But in general, before COVID, there were many more people over 50 working. It was on the increase. But even so, lots of people who want to work finding that difficult, either because of health or caring responsibilities. And obviously, we're really worried about the impact of COVID on employment, with huge numbers of older workers being laid off or on furlough at the moment, with the prospect of being laid off when that comes to an end. So it's going to be really important to support those people to get back into jobs as quickly as possible. So again, health is quite a major reason why people are not working, and as we've seen, that's worse for poor people. So what we've been doing is trying to identify what is it that employers can do to enable people to work for longer, and that's about flexibility. It's about eliminating age bias in recruitment, and we've just launched a report this week which has had great publicity. You may have heard some of my colleagues speaking about that on the radio or seen it in the newspapers. It's about supporting people with health conditions or disability to make adjustments so they can carry on working, to ensure that people can keep developing at all ages, access to training, keeping our skills up. And the other thing is just making sure that the culture at work is age positive, so that people of all ages feel included and welcome. So maybe here's an idea. How about getting some of your local employers to commit to becoming age-friendly employers and adopting these 5 simple practices? So the next area I want to touch on is creating better communities. And I'm just going to check with Chris and say, please, if you if I've got to my 30 minutes, do come in and interrupt me, but I'll just keep going. I think I've got a little bit longer yet. So creating better communities. We've all spent a lot more time, haven't we, in our communities, and we know how important it is to feel that we've got people around us. And I really hope that, you know, if you to be at home, if you've got an underlying condition and been shielding, that you've had the support from, you know, friends and neighbours and community organisations to be able to stay safe and well at home, or maybe you've been involved in helping others in your local area. So I suppose the positive news is that actually the older we get, the more likely we are to feel that we have a sort of sense of belonging to our neighbourhood. Now, maybe that's because you know, we spend more time as we get older in our communities and as we retire from work. Obviously, up until the lockdown, many of us who were in jobs were busy commuting into central London and not actually spending a lot of time in our communities. And maybe as a commuter, you don't feel you belong as much. I think that's really changed with everybody working from home, but maybe we can pick some of this up in our discussion about how you think things have changed. Obviously, and many of you, I'm sure, are regular volunteers. In fact, older ages, 65 plus, are more likely to be regularly volunteering than people at other ages. So traditionally, a huge core in terms of making formal volunteering, but also informal volunteering. Now, obviously, through the crisis, again, a lot of people perhaps felt been safe to do some of their face-to-face volunteering, and you know, some organizations have been fantastic in creating new volunteering opportunities on the phone or online to keep people engaged. But through our work, we've identified that volunteering often isn't as age-friendly and inclusive as it could be, with people feeling that they're not perhaps really wanted or valued, or if they do have a health condition or something's changed in their life, they might drop out of volunteering and then don't find their way back. So we've developed some principles. We've been working with some volunteering organisations to put this into practice. There's loads of really great resources. So if you're involved in any local voluntary sector organisation, how about asking them to adopt our age-friendly and inclusive volunteering principles? and think about what could really make it possible for more people of all ages and abilities to participate in whatever community activity you're involved in. The other, of course, is I think you have good links to local council. It's about trying to just keep making the case for the need for investment, both in community infrastructure, but also that physical infrastructure to make sure that it enables people to stay active, whether that's transport routes, pavements, but also we're working with Leeds as a partner. They have something called neighbourhood networks that the local authority have funded for many, many years. And they've really been at the heart of the COVID response, organising support for people in the local community. And I think it's really critical, you know, the voluntary sector have had a terribly tough time, or continue to. And it's really important that there are, in all communities, some sort of support that can enable that community mobilisation and that community activity to happen. So the final area I want to just touch on is our homes. And again, gosh, probably all sick of our homes, aren't we? We spend far too much time in them. I certainly feel that some days. And it's, you know, in a sense, woken us up to the shortcomings of our homes if we, you know, if we spent time. Certainly, I'm much more aware of the, you know, the repairs and things that have not been done, and the DIY jobs, having to spend much more time here with not traveling to the office. But I'm very lucky. You know, generally my home is, you know, safe and in good condition. But across this country, our housing is some of the oldest in the whole of Europe, and actually it's causing us to not be very well. So it can cause us to have health problems, but also falls and other things, which have obviously very big costs, both for health and social care. The other thing is that most of our homes are not accessible or even adaptable. So at the moment we have a very basic accessibility standard, and we can see here that 91% of our homes don't meet even that basic level, which makes a home visitable. So if you have a mobility issue, there are steps up to the front door, you can't even go and visit someone in that home, or it doesn't have a downstairs loo. And we are working really hard at the moment to lobby the government to increase those accessibility standards so that they are homes that could be adapted for people to continue to live in. So there's a lot to do to adapt our homes. And we've looked at the evidence, which says that even very minor adaptations can be hugely cost effective. That means they don't cost very much, but they have a really big positive benefit on people's dependence and reducing things like falls. We've also talked to professionals and people with lived experience about their experience of getting home adaptations. There's a lot of people, there's a lot of delays in the system, trying to get an occupational therapist to perhaps come and do an assessment. There's really low awareness of the funding that's available to help you if you have a low income. The whole system is really quite complicated to navigate. And then there's the concern that the tradespeople that you might get to actually come and do the work, you know, can you trust them? What's the quality? So, you know, and then you look at the products. If you have got money and you want to make changes yourself, often the products available are so ugly that you're really resistant to wanting to put them in your home unless you desperately have to. And so people are delaying making changes to their home because these products are just not things that people want to have in their home. On the other hand, you know, many of us might be thinking about, if you're redoing your bathroom, why not put a walk-in shower in? It can look actually really great and still be something that would work for you if you developed a mobility issue in the future. So we're trying to shift the market to get more products and services that are going to look attractive, so that whenever we're changing our kitchen, bathroom, we can get the right advice and the right products to make changes way before we need them, that are going to work for us for longer. In fact, I've just done a thing where I've changed, we had doorknobs and I've put levers. It's just such a simple change, but if you have any issues with your grip, and it's so much more convenient, if you've got a cup of tea in your hand, then you can open the door. So So there's a whole lot of things there for your local health and care and housing. We're working together just to make it easier for you and other people as you need to make home aids and adaptations accessible, available. So raising awareness, helping people to navigate and making sure they can get speedy access to the money. So the final thing, and I promised Toni I would just touch on this before I finish, because I do want to leave us a good 20 minutes for questions, is about age-friendly communities. So this is really about taking a place-based approach. So far I've sort of looked at things, housing, health, communities, work separately. But the age-friendly communities is about bringing that all together in a place. And we do know that where we live can make a big difference to how involved we feel, how connected we are, and so on. So we work with places across the country, and it's a growing network. I think Ange said there were up to 46. She's our outgoing network manager. We've got a new network manager coming in. And obviously the whole of Wales is committed to being age friendly. So really a strong and vibrant network across the UK. So why are age friendly communities important? Well, one of the key things is there's a requirement to engage older residents in shaping the place that they live. So really about active engagement of local people in all sorts of things, decisions that the council might be making, consulting on, transport planning, on their housing plans, health plans, and so on. So really helping to shape things. It is a preventative approach. So what's really great about it is that many councils are very concerned about their social care budgets, but it's almost sort of too late, isn't it, when you're in need of social care. So this is much more about how do we positively promote healthy aging, that sort of active later life. It's very focused on reducing barriers so that people can continue to participate and contribute in whatever way, whether that's employment or caring or volunteering. And as I say, very much influencing some of these key aspects of a local place. And it's very much around a cross-sector approach. So this is about trying to take ageing out from just being seen as a problem for health and social care and into much more of a positive opportunity about how you help people in the local area to live and age well. And some of the places that we work with have got that as a strategic priority in their plans. So the Leeds Best Council Plan committed to making Leeds the best place to grow old. So that's the sort of aspiration that we're really looking for. And it's fantastic that at present we've got 4 London boroughs in the network, and the GLA are committed. They are bringing now a group together of the age-friendly London boroughs and starting to build a repository, a sort of a resource for London age-friendly best practice. So there's a really growing momentum, I think, across London, and GLA are really supporting that. So we do hope that Enfield will look at committing to and becoming a age-friendly community. And they've been so important during COVID. Really, there's a lot of action and expertise to help with the response, but now also with the recovery planning. And we've been able to bring people together throughout the COVID to have regular network calls and people supporting one another. So I'm just going to finish by hopefully inspiring you with a video, if I can get it to work. Actually, I realized that I didn't set the settings to give the audio. So I'm going to just stop sharing, quickly reshare, play you a quick video, and then I'm going to be ready for your questions. So just give me 1 second to just redo this. I have to share sound, and let's try that again. And again, it might be good, Chris, if you in a moment give me a thumbs up to see.
2020 marks the beginning of the decade of healthy aging. The decade is an opportunity for 10 years of concerted, global, cross-sector collaboration to improve the lives of older people, their families, and the communities in which they live. The decade vision is for everyone to live long and healthy lives. To achieve this vision, fundamental shifts will be required, not only in the actions we take, but in how we think about age and aging. The development of age-friendly cities and communities around the world is one of 4 key priorities for action, and the UK network of age-friendly communities has a huge contribution to make towards the decade's success. As a network, we will ensure that active and healthy ageing is seen as everybody's business by building relationships, learning and collaboration across sectors, services and between generations. We will take action so that all older people are respected, listened to and can contribute to decision-making in the communities that they live. We will embrace the diversity of older people, addressing inequalities and ageism and building more equitable places for us all to age in. We will advocate for the physical infrastructure that meets the needs and aspirations of older people, including digital, housing, transport and public spaces. What role will you play? Let's take action today for all our tomorrows. Let's make ageing better.
So if anyone's interested, that's the book, The Age of Aging Better, that I wrote, and you can order it. You can get it on things like Amazon or through your local bookshop, but you can get it from Bloomsbury, and perhaps I'll just make sure that I share that and the discount code with you in the chat in a moment. And I had thought of some questions because I'd like to hear from you as much as I'm here to answer questions. I really would like to know, what you think it might take for Enfield to become an age-friendly community, and picking up some of the themes, what would you like to see happen locally? What do you think could happen to enable people to be more physically active and healthy, remain in work longer, participate fully in community activities, and make sure that those housing options I spoke about that could support people to remain healthy and independent for longer, what's needed. So again, I might post those questions in the chat, and I'd be really interested to hear any of your responses, but that's it from me. So is it Christine?
Yeah, hello, yeah, I'm here. Word. Hello, thank you. Thank you very much, Anna. Whoa, there was a lot of information there.
I know.
Thank you. Food for thought, definitely. And so would anybody like to answer Anna's question? She just asked, what can we do in Enfield? Is there anybody who would actually like to make any suggestions? Because we would love to hear from you, all of us.
Can I make a suggestion?
Can you put your hand up?
I've put my hand up. It's Jean.
Hey, Jean. Yeah, go on, Jean.
Yeah, a couple of things. I did another question in the chat, but there is in Enfield, we do have the Older Persons Partnership Board that, the Enfield Over 50s Forum and a number of us actually belong to. And they do have a meeting the week after, next week, in fact. And I think that one of that is the local authority that runs that, but it has a very wide ranging group of members in it. And I think that something would be good to start off with is actually talking to John Newman, who chairs that from the London Borough of Enfield, and sort of getting him moving on that. So very happy to follow up on that.
Thank you. Tony, you'd like to come in there?
Yes. Anna, I think you could help us actually in terms of your promotion. It would be very useful if you could champion getting older people champions in all of our local authorities, because we don't have an older people's champion in Enfield, but we really do need an older people's champion. And so there's that area. In terms of London itself, we have a deputy mayor whose role is not specifically for older people, but for a much wider remit. Mm-hmm. And it would be really nice if in the larger conurbations that we had an older person's mayor, deputy mayor, to push for the issues that are really important to the older people. Perhaps you could do something about that.
Yeah, so I think Deb Weeks. Yeah. So I'm sorry if my sound wasn't good. I've just seen in the chat. So
yeah, there were a couple of glitches. It wasn't major, but
Okay, yeah, sorry about that.
Just picking up on Tony's point, surely we can actually start off with the Older Persons Partnership Board, because the local authority, in addition to running that board, obviously has major links with other bodies in there. And we're also now in London, in terms of the health side of things, we do have a much larger clinical commissioning group, which I'm involved with the local patient participation group. So I think we are actually getting more into borough collaboration there. It's certainly something, Chrissy, I think it's worth us just putting under AOB at least for the meeting next week at the Older Persons Partnership Board.
Yeah, will you be attending that, Tony?
Yes, yeah, I'll be at the Older People's Partnership Board meeting next week. I have written to some of the councillors asking them to support us having an older people's champion, somebody that sits on the partnership board and also has really a responsibility for dealing with groups that look after or are interested in older people's issues across the borough. So that's important.
That all sounds like a really positive, way to progress that discussion. And certainly, as I mentioned, we're just at the moment handing over from our UK Age-Friendly Community Network Manager to a new one, but we do have some resources that we could share with you that will help you make that case. And of course, there is someone in the GLA who is the sort of age-friendly lead. And again, I'm sure that they would be very happy to talk to you about how to make the case for why this is important.
Yeah, thank you. John Ball, your hand is up. John, you need to unmute.
I hope I'm unmuted.
You are.
Yeah, just as a matter of getting terminology correct, Debbie, the Deputy Mayor, does describe herself as an older person's champion for the GLA. So if we're running around commenting on older person's champions, we do need to be aware that we already have one for the GLA. Having said that, she is incredibly able, but her portfolio covers everything under the sun. Or almost everything under the sun that's labelled social. So whether or not she performs as one would hope a older person's champion should, I don't know, but it is important to not insult her by pretending she's not there.
She is there, and certainly, I've met with her. I think she's very committed to the agenda, and I also attended a really great engagement event. I don't know if any of you went to that, but it's people from across London to help with the sort of age-friendly action planning. So there's been, she spoke there and met with people. So I think, she does have a wide portfolio. Obviously, people at that level, that's unavoidable. But I think there is a genuine commitment there. And as I say, the team that sits sort of in the GLA who are responsible for Age Friendly, I think would be very supportive of you joining if Enfield, when I say you, I mean Enfield Council made that commitment.
Thank you.
Did anybody have any thoughts or views on the questions I posed? Or did it resonate at all about sort of your home and keeping active, some of the challenges? I'd just love to hear from you. I think Tony might be putting his hand up.
Yes, I think I'm unmuted. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to say that fascinating talk, Anna. Thank you for that. The ideas of being physically active and participating in community activities can, of course, very much be joined together in things, because I play, for example, both bowls and croquet, and those both have clubs which tend to be very good socially, as well as giving you a bit of fairly gentle, admittedly, physical activity, but nevertheless you are out walking around in pleasant surroundings with nice people. I'm lucky that I'm fit enough that I still run as well on the streets and in the parks and go for fitness classes, which there are a lot of. And of course, those have developed a lot over the last year or so online through Zoom as well. Though we're looking forward to getting back into Ali Pali Park with my group on the 29th of March. I think we'll be allowed to do that. But do think, even if you've never played sport before, and lots of people who get into both bowls and croquet haven't played anything serious, but do think about doing that and sort of joining it together, forming new friendships, new community activities. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. We will form a queue at your bowls club.
When it opens again, the indoor one, which won't be for a couple of months yet. Yeah.
Irene Richards, that's it.
Yeah, I was very intrigued by your extremely complicated Venn diagram. It indicated all too clearly the vast complexity of the problem that not just older people, but the whole country, the whole nation faces in terms of providing, shall we say, a nation-friendly attitude towards its people. Government has a huge responsibility in this. We can tinker at the edges, making our small changes with champions and so on, who I've never discovered to have been entirely satisfactory or very influential. I think this is a great problem. It's a question of how seriously you're taken. But the thing is that what is needed is direction from the centre in order to create policies that are actually going to work. You know, if you take one example, the preventative agenda of government, you know, with the vast changes that are now taking place yet again with our National Health Service and social care, which has been a Cinderella for so many years, the problems that any government is facing at the moment are so complex that I think, to be quite frank, they don't know where to direct their shot. It's a shotgun sort of approach, or a scattergun approach that is happening at the moment. I've thought quite a lot about this, and I think that it's a question of what, in terms of, shall we say, a moral, and I'm, you know, perhaps I'm going into the area of philosophy here, but a moral application is, what is government for? The government should be for the betterment of the people, but we don't see this happening in governments our own and around the world at the moment, that they are concentrating on making money. And money is very important, but it depends how it's distributed. That is the important thing in society. Yeah. I can make just sort of, I'll make just one statement that I heard recently, which was that governments should stop, should make policies that eliminate inequalities and poverty and stop shooting the poor.
Well, that's a very stark statement, yes. But I can come back a little bit on that if you want, unless you want to take any more questions. Yeah. So, well, thanks, Tony, for your comments. I totally agree that you know, part of the motivation for physical activity is the social aspect, and it's certainly why people keep these things up. You know, it's really hard, isn't it, if you're a solo runner to keep motivated. But, you know, if you're there as a group or you're meeting people, it's maybe easier. It depends. You obviously are a very motivated runner, Tony, so that's great. But in general, the evidence is that people will keep up physical activity more likely if they're doing it as something that's also got a social element. So I think it was a really positive you know, encouragement there to people. And really, any activity is better than none. So, you know, you were sort of saying it's light activity, it doesn't really matter, you know, compared to inactivity. Doing some activity has really great benefits, more benefit in a way than if you're very active and getting a little bit more active. So getting active in any way, whether it's walking or, as you say, some light activity, fantastic. So the worst thing you can do is what I'm doing all day, which is sitting down at the computer. So don't be too sedentary, you know, stand up during the ad breaks and do, you know, all of that. And coming to Irene's points about the government, so in my book, I very much set out a lot of the different changes that need to happen, and quite a lot of them, you know, are things for national government or local government. There are things there for businesses, for employers, and for, you know, house builders and so on. This is, you know, it's about the whole of society. But, you know, you're absolutely right that there is a key role for government. There is a problem that obviously in this face of this pandemic, the government has been in crisis mode, dealing with a health crisis and now an economic crisis. And so there isn't much long-term thinking. And so thinking about, you know, how are we actually responding longer term to the fact that, you know, there is an aging population is not really very high on the agenda. So we're trying to make our message as relevant as possible and really make sure that the actions they're taking, both in response to COVID and as we sort of try and move towards recovery, that those are the right things to be doing for the longer term as well. And clearly, COVID has, in some cases, highlighted existing inequalities and in some cases made those inequalities worse. And so again, it's really important that we do hold government to account, as you say, to make sure that the policies are not going to worsen those inequalities, but are actually going to begin to address them. And that does mean, you know, thinking about targeted support to certain communities. It may mean focusing very much on health inequalities and thinking about the things that are affecting people who have got the worst health. So that, you know, includes things like, you know, reformulating food, taking out salt and sugar. Some of these sort of actions sort of do need to be taken. And in other areas, we think government, you know, can change the rules for housing. You know, instead of waiting on a voluntary basis, they're not going to do it unless they're told to, and there's a level playing field. So some really important ways, Irene, and I do set those out in the book, and they are things that the Centre for Ageing Better tries to do, as well as working locally in the way I described today.
Irene,
if I may, just very, very briefly, and I think one of the things that is required is long-term planning, rather than the stop-start, do a bit here, bit there, knee-jerk and so on and so forth. And this is something that governments are appallingly bad at doing. You know, you get it in a few of the Scandinavian countries where they've got, you know, sort of better services in many respects and more equal societies. But government has got to stop thinking short-term and look over at an overarching theme about how do we make things better for everybody, not just some, but everybody. We, instead of setting up you know, arguments between older people and younger people, who's going to pay our pensions and so
here. So yes, we're talking really about the government having a positive ageing strategy. Other countries have had that for quite some time. New Zealand, Singapore, they've got it. They realise that, you know, they have to do something, and it has to be the whole of government, you know, not just one bit of it. It's not about fixing pensions or fixing social care, although probably both do need attention.
Thank you. Toni, your hand is up.
Yes, and one of the things that the forum gets lots of its members for is the fact that we have five leisure centres in the borough that are owned by the council, and there's a franchise to Fusion to run these. But what we've done as a forum is we've persuaded Fusion to give our members discounts on the rates for joining the leisure centres. Now, of our normally 6,000 members, probably at least half of them join because of they can get a discount at the leisure centres. So we've been very proactive in doing this, and I think that's probably a good example that other boroughs might pick up and use to make it easier for older people to use the local leisure centres. And what we have there are over 50s fitness days every day of the week. So if you're if you're somebody that's keen on keeping fit, which many of our members are, then you can attend a leisure centre fitness day aimed specifically at older people with badminton, table tennis, Pilates, all sorts of activities you can do as an older person in a group. So, I think that's
it sounds a fantastic
quite a good example.
Yeah, no, it sounds like a fantastic example. You know, we're before COVID hit again, we're looking at how we could influence the leisure sector across the country through the sort of they have a membership organisation called UK Active, and so we were actually looking for really great examples of local leisure organisations who were doing things specifically to encourage people in this age group to get active. So so that sounds like a really great example, Toni. I think the issue is sometimes though that the professionals, so I don't know if any of you here have used that offer in the past, and whether you found the sort of the trainers and the people in the running the sessions to be really knowledgeable. Maybe if you had a health condition or have something that you're having to manage, are they able to be sensitive to that and advise you on what appropriate activity to do? Because I think that's one of the other barriers here. So not only does it often not seem very attractive or not promoted or marketed in a way that makes people feel it's for them, if most of the classes are blaring loud music and people pumping on, maybe that's your thing, but it's not mine. That might be somewhat off-putting. So creating the right environment, creating the right classes, making it feel like it's somewhere for you to go, but then also making sure that the staff working there are knowledgeable and have the right skills to support you appropriately with a sort of exercise regime. So I think there's more to do, but it sounds like you really have locally a forward-thinking provider, which is great, obviously, when they're open.
Yeah.
One of the things that also happens at these leisure centres, they set aside a meeting room for the groups to have a coffee, have lunch. So you can stay there all day if you want to and do all sorts of activities. And that they have some very good trainers there as well. Everybody has to have an induction day when they first go along, and they can always go back to the responsible person. We have a designated older person's champion in the leisure centres, which is good, and so he looks after the activities across the various leisure centres.
Yeah. Thank you, Toni. Thank you, Anna. Now, I don't see any further hands up or any indication of any more questions. I can't see anything else in the chat. Are there any? Jean, unmute, please.
I think our time might be close up as well.
Yeah,
I don't know.
We are getting close. Yeah.
Just very quickly then, one of the areas I think we need to focus on is digital exclusion. My background was in IT about 200 years ago when it first started. And one of the things I've been involved with for a very long time is technology and disabled people. And one of the things that we decided was that society disables people. And I think in many ways, that's what we're finding about this generation, is that there are attitudes in society or the lack of facilities that actually prevent people from being fully included, in this case, digital inclusion. So one of the things, I'm in touch with one of your colleagues about this, Anna, sort of, and I belong to one of the livery companies in the City of London called the 100th livery company called the Information Technologists. We do quite a lot of work with charities in terms of digital exclusion or inclusion. So I think that is an area as we go forward, then it is worth actually looking at, I think.
Yeah, it's interesting that, sorry, just to add to what Jean just said, it's interesting that of several, I think 6,000 members we've got, someone said, I think.
Yeah, getting on for.
Yeah, of that, who are probably all at home because of COVID and lockdown. We've got 25 here this morning, only 25.
Yeah, but some people don't enjoy attending meetings.
Yeah, I appreciate it, but yeah. My point still stands, I think.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
I mean, you're into.
Jean, I want to tell you that you don't look a day over 150.
Thank you very much. 149. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's an area I think of collaboration. You know,
Yeah.
we can sort of start to get involved in.
I think we do actually, when we can, we do have groups where we are trying to encourage older people to use IT. And obviously, one of my phone calls this week was about when that starts again, a woman phoned to say, I really want to join that group.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, it is important. I absolutely agree with you that we do have people who are excluded because they don't have access to proper IT facilities. Yeah.
I mean,
That's a
our
very good point, Jean,
classes in the centre were very well attended, but of course they can't be attended at the moment.
Yeah,
and,
exactly.
And you're doing the same as we've done, which is telephone friends and things. And when you talk to people over the telephone, you do get this lack of confidence. You know, they've got the technology. Yeah.
Well, it's great that so many of you have joined today. I hope that you found it interesting and enjoyable.
Very much
and
so.
I've enjoyed meeting with you and hearing your really great questions and feedback. And yeah, if you are interested, please do you know, follow up and have a look at our website and some of the things that we're doing.
Yeah. We will.
Anna, sorry, what's the title of your book? Sorry about that. What's the title of your book again, Anna?
It's The Age of Aging Better.
Thank you.
There we are. Well, I would like to thank Anna enormously for such a really interesting presentation, and look at the you know, you have engendered a really good discussion, Anna. Thank you so much. And thank you to all of you who participated in the discussion today. It's been really, really heartwarming to hear that you've got lots of different ideas. And I think some people are going to go off and actually take action after today's meeting, which is really important. No point in just sitting here thinking, oh, that was all right, now I'll go and make a cup of tea. Let's do something.
Yeah.
And try to encourage, and also talk to other people. I think we all know people who, we were talking about our own communities, and I think we all know people within our own community who do simply sit at home and are lonely, and you know, that's what we're trying to do with the telephone friends scheme, to try to get people to engage. And I think, you know, that's really important. And there's been a lot of talk about mental health during the COVID crisis, and I think that's a really crucial area too, to actually get people to engage and to participate. So thank you, Anna. Really,
it's been a pleasure. Lovely to meet you. Thanks for inviting me, and I hope you have all a really good day. And
thank you.
we're out of this soon.
Hope so.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.